welcome everyone out to an evening with Jackley. But before we welcome her out here, we have a few upcoming events. On April 26th, we have the Yes Men in Warren Theater at 7:30 p.m. On May 1st, we have the Midnight Howl at 11:30 p.m. in the Stevenson Quad, which we're trying to get Sonoma State in the Guinness Book of World Records, so hopefully we'll see you all there. And we have Field the Hill on May 2nd, which is the last baseball game of the season. So that will be on the baseball field at 12 p.m. Just a reminder, turn off all your cell phones so we will have full attention on Jessica Jackley. There's also a raffle, so on your way out, make sure you fill out a raffle so you can get a $125 prize with the Indigenous people, which is one of our sponsors. So that's really great. So you want one of those. Okay. Okay. We also would like to thank the School of Business and Economics for all their help and support. They co-sponsored this event with ASP, so let's give a big round of applause for all their efforts. Okay, so Jessica Jackley is the co-founder of Kiva, which is the first and largest micro-lending website. Little known fact, because I like little known facts, she went on Oprah, which was amazing, but she was very distracted because she was sitting next to Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton trumps Oprah. And also little known fact, she does yoga every day and she also surfs. So let's give a big round of applause for Jessica Jackley. I really like that intro. It was very to the point, the little known facts are good. Thank you very much. It's been so nice to be here for the last few hours, and I hope to come back for a longer period of time in the future, but it's lovely to be here. Thank you all for coming out and giving me a little bit of your time. I'm not sure what you're expecting to hear tonight. I don't know if you are here for class, and you have to be, which is cool. We're going to make it fun, but don't, hang with me. Give me a chance. I don't know if you're expecting to hear about microfinance. I don't know if you're expecting me to talk about business or building a tech startup in Silicon Valley. I don't know if you're expecting to hear lots of stories about working in East Africa. But what you're going to hear about is my story, a little bit about my life and how that story dovetails with the story of Kiva. And then what I hope is that you leave here knowing that stories are important and that your story is important. And there are moments, I think, in all of our lives. They are sometimes little, very quiet moments, and sometimes they're big, kind of obvious moments that we can stop and really learn something and kind of change the path in our lives and change the trajectory of our own stories. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about mine, and then my favorite part of these evenings is getting to Q&A. So think of questions. You can't ask a question that's off limits, so start thinking of that. Okay, you can start stories anywhere, right? Stories are very, very important to the idea of Kiva. And before we go in, I will tell you very basically who here has not been on the website. This is totally okay. This is a no pressure situation. Okay, great. Now I know. Well, I'm going to tell you what it is really quickly so you get up to speed and then you'll have context. So Kiva is a micro-lending website. So this is a screenshot of it. You can go to this website. You can browse profiles of entrepreneurs that need a small loan. Sometimes it's a single entrepreneur. Sometimes it's a group of entrepreneurs. But they usually just need a few $100s to start or to grow a small business and to lift themselves and their families out of poverty. It's a pretty amazing thing that can happen. You can lend $25, you can lend $50, whatever you'd like. Most people just lend, I think average portfolio size right now with lenders is like $125, so just a little bit of money over time. And then you get repaid. So let's say you lend to this group, you can't tell a lot about them right there, but they need $1,700, kind of a large sum. But they will repay you, say, over 9 or 10 months, and you'll get updates on how their business is going, and you can relend your money as it comes back into your account. Good? We get it? Any basic questions before I dive in? Okay, great. All right. So I'm going to start this story tonight, part of my story, when I was 6 years old. Now, don't worry. I'm going to fast forward through a lot of elements and a lot of years of this story. But I do want to start there because when I was 6, it was the first time that I learned about poverty. And I have a pretty vivid memory of when this happened. I was I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, actually a suburb outside of, but no one knows that, unless anyone from Pittsburgh. Okay, sometimes I do that and I hear like really loud yells. People are diehards if they're from Pittsburgh. So anyway, go Steelers. Sorry no one else is out there to cheer with me, but yeah. So okay, I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, and I was my family grew up in a really wonderful Presbyterian church, and I was in Sunday school one day. By the way, this is not like an evangelistic talk or anything. I'm just telling you kind of what happened in my life. But so, just putting that out there, sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to listen to this church. No, it's just, I'm telling you what happened when I was 6. So, I was in Sunday school, and I remember the Sunday school teacher teaching us about people who were poor. And she said, people who were poor didn't have some of the things that they needed. They didn't have food or clothing or shelter, something basic. And they needed those things. And ostensibly, this is where it started to get a little bit funny, this group of 6-year-olds sitting, listening to her, we were supposed to help these poor people. So apparently, I, a 6-year-old kid, was supposed to help these people get food and clothing and shelter. That was something I should be thinking about. Because apparently, there were poor people in the world, and they were out there somewhere far away. And there were everyone else. There's everyone else in the world, and we were rich. That seemed to be the dichotomy. So anyway, the lesson kept going, and she started to pull out, not at random, but this is how I remember it, pull out different scriptures that talked about the poor. One of the scriptures she pulled out was, and again, I'm going to paraphrase, but basically saying that Jesus says the poor will always be with us. So first of all, I was kind of a dramatic kid. I remember thinking, like, what is going on? I was terrified because I had just learned about these people that wanted me to give them stuff, and they were never going away. Like, what was going on? And so I literally pictured in my head, I pictured this long line of people, like, trailing behind me. Anywhere I'd go in my life, they'd be there, and I was supposed to, like, give them stuff all the time. And I could imagine, I had a little brother, so I totally understood sharing. Like, I got, okay, I can share this with you. But I didn't know how this was going to work logistically, and I started to kind of freak out in my little 6-year-old mind. So that's a little glimpse into my psyche. Anyway, then the next thing that she said, thank goodness it was on the heels of this, very quickly after she totally freaked me out. She said, and Jesus also said, what you do, again, paraphrasing, what you do for the least of these, you do for me. And I thought, whoa. I had this big understanding that I thought Jesus was God, same guy, same thing. And I thought, okay, first of all, God needs help. This is weird. I didn't know that God needs help. I was doing this big stuff, right? But then I remember thinking, this is kind of awesome. I get to help do something that's important to God. This is really important stuff. And I felt, so that day, I felt both totally overwhelmed and freaked out about this problem that was never going away, but also really excited and kind of empowered, like, I'm a 6-year-old kid that can help God. This is amazing. So I better figure this stuff out. Okay, we're going to fast forward many years. Now, fast forward. Many of the other stories I heard about the poor were not just in Sunday school, but were from nonprofit brochures or the news, telling me stories of sadness and of suffering and of overwhelmingly bad things in the lives of these poor people. I saw pictures of kids who were sick or in need of food or something else, right? Kind of the same themes over and over again. And these pictures and these stories were really overwhelming. I remember I kind of got into this sort of pattern where I would start to hear about somebody living in poverty, but usually about a whole lot of people. You didn't often hear just about one. Sometimes you did, from people like Sally Shutters, right? Sometimes it was just one on a picture. By the way, we have a lot to talk about with her, and God bless her, but I had some issues because it confused me a lot, but we're going to go back to this for a second. So basically, I heard these stories of sadness, and I heard them from nonprofits that often gave me a nice little way out of my sadness, right? You would hear all these overwhelming statistics, these big sad things, stories of real suffering, but if I only gave X amount of dollars right now, things might start to get better. So I got into this pattern of feeling really bad and all these bad feelings accruing, aggregating until the tipping point happened when I would reach into my wallet and give whatever I had, $5, $10, $20 so I could feel better about myself and move on with my day, right? And this is a pattern that happens. So anytime I even saw a story of poverty coming, I was like, I feel so guilty, I feel so bad. And truthfully, those feelings can really build up. I felt actually, after a while, a deep shame about my own relative wealth. Now, to be clear, I grew up maybe in a middle class, I don't know actually, lower middle class family in the suburb of Pittsburgh. It's not like I was stunningly wealthy or anything, but I was a normal, well-fed, well-loved kid. But I started to feel really shameful about my own relative wealth. Okay, so fast forward a bit more to Sally. I started to figure out, I started to ask questions about okay, how does this work? Do I just have to go through this pattern in life where when I hear about sad stuff, hear about poverty, I do a little action of the day, you know, I send this money, I sign up to volunteer for 3 hours, whatever it is, and then I feel better and like kind of ignore the stories until I have to hear them again, and then I feel bad again, and then I feel better again. Like, this is not sustainable. So basically, I started to think about, okay, what's enough? Is there a formula out there? I'll figure it out, it'll be great. And I remember thinking about Sally and how if you only gave X amount of money, a few pennies a day, the cost of a cup of coffee, and you could kind of check it off your list, right? And I remember thinking about this, like, okay, I like coffee. Is it really the cost of the cup of coffee? Is it 2 cups of coffee? Is it you can still have your coffee, but then you also give a little bit of money that is equal to or greater than? Like, how does this work? So this is me trying to figure it out. Fast forward a little bit more. I started to kind of decide that I needed to experience these things, and instead of giving little bits of money, which I didn't really have much of at all, I would spend much more of my time trying to figure it out. So in high school, I signed up to go with this service trip to Haiti. Now, I'm a high school senior. I jump onto this plane that takes me, it's like 90 minutes after you get to Miami. It takes me to Haiti. And I have this week of just heartbreaking, again, pretty overwhelming experiences getting to meet people who are living in terribly abject poverty, and getting to meet kids who are my age or younger that every day they don't go to school, they're trying to figure out how to eat. And I remember getting through this week, and I was joking with some people before, I think what we did there that week, it wasn't useless, it was meaningful and it was good, but I don't really remember what we did. I know we painted some walls, and I definitely painted a lot for poverty over the years. Like, a lot of service projects I've done have happened to be painting, which is kind of fun. But I remember, like, we painted some stuff and we hung out with kids, but really the trip was just a way to kind of expose ourselves, myself and my friends in high school, to this new group of people, and vice versa. But here's the deal. So I come back after this trip, a week-long time there, and the next week it was senior prom. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, what is wrong with the world? I don't understand how this makes sense. And I remember kind of bursting into tears several times that week leading up to prom, and of course right in the middle of the dance floor and everything, because I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand how the world, this is the same world. What am I supposed to do? How do I stay true to this experience that I just had in Haiti, where I saw that this reality exists as well? And then am I supposed to just go spend all this money on a fancy dress? And like, is everyone okay with this? And I was kind of freaking out. So just would like to announce I was freaking out in high school. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know how I was supposed to be helpful. I felt frustrated at a lot of the options I had out there. They didn't feel like they were very meaningful at all. Don't worry, the story gets happier. So, fast forward a little bit more. I go to college. I went to Bucknell University and I studied philosophy because I wanted to learn how to ask better questions and kind of question a lot of my own assumptions, because I felt frustrated that I hadn't figured this out. And I wanted to understand, like, really how is the world supposed to be working out there, and am I missing something huge? I also studied political science because I thought maybe if you just like fix some little rule, or big rule, something in policy and government, everything will fall into place and a lot of these problems will go away. Not a bad thought. I also studied poetry because, as you may be able to tell, I can kind of be a loose cannon, and poetry was really good for me because it taught me to slow down and just read a few words on a page and pause. And have a lot of white space. It was good. It was really good. I loved it. Anyway, that's why. So that was me in college. Nothing really conclusive there either. I did, again, continue to do these volunteer things. I tried, more painting, volunteering, on a regular basis, volunteering on like these big week-long alternative spring break things, and they were all really valuable experiences. I still felt though I hadn't found my thing. I hadn't found the way that I wanted to really dedicate my time and my life in a significant way to this way of serving, this way of alleviating poverty. I didn't feel like I was finding it, but it was important that I was searching and searching. Okay, now we're really going to fast forward. So I would like to have a disclaimer at this moment in time. This is not a prescriptive talk. This is not a talk where I'm saying I think all of you should go do this. I'm just going to tell you what I did, but don't say Jessica said to do this if you end up doing this. So I didn't have a job after school. I didn't really have a plan. I was super into school, super type A, always had all my little goals. I had a crazy, back in the day planner. It was like 2 full pages. Yeah, really planned, but I didn't have a plan after college. But so dorky. But I graduated and I was in love with the boys, so I moved to California. This is how I got here. And not here, but to the state. And I basically took the first job I could get, and it happened to be at Stanford. I lived across the street from Stanford in a big house with like 10 roommates. It was a big, crowded, fun house. And I walked across the street one day and handed out my resume to anyone who would take it. And the first job that I got was as a temporary administrative assistant in the Stanford Graduate School of Business. That was my debut. I didn't realize it when I was taking the job, but it was in this department called the Center for Social Innovation. So it just so happened that I landed in a place where every day people were coming together to think about how business skills and business thinking could be applied to solve social problems. So I quickly realized that I had landed in a really wonderful place, and I started to listen to the people that were walking through those hallways, the students, the professors, all these different speakers and thought leaders that would kind of come through. And I started to crash classes once in a while when I could. I started to sit in the back of like lectures if no one would mind. I tried to absorb all that I could. And I kind of over the next few years got a lay of the land of what the heck was happening in the social sector. And what was great was I started to meet people who were doing jobs that I could imagine being my dream jobs. Like I would see people who had done one job for a few years after college, and then they would graduate and go run a nonprofit. And I thought, that's awesome, that's what I want to do. And I never saw business as a path to do that. I hadn't taken a business course at that point. I didn't know the difference between profit and revenue. I mean, I really did not know anything about business, but I was trying to learn. Well, anyway, one day I stayed late after work because there was this guy named Dr. Muhammad Yunus that was stopping by and giving a talk on campus. So Dr. Yunus, for those for whom this name is unfamiliar, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work kind of pioneering modern microfinance in 2006. So this was fall of 2003. I didn't really know who he was, but I thought it was kind of part of my quest, part of my journey. So I stayed after, listened, and basically his story was one of these aha moments in my life. And there were three main things that he said that really touched me. One, he told me about microfinance, financial services for the poor. So he explained it in a way that I could understand, not really knowing anything about business. He said, he explained what those products and services, savings accounts, insurance products, small loans, meant for somebody living on a few dollars a day. So that clicked. Number two, he told his own story in a way that was really, really accessible. So he talked about basically being a professor at the University of Chittagong in Bangladesh, and then kind of going across town to sit down with a group of poor women who were basket weavers and asking them directly why they were poor. So he went from this, these big theories to actually talking to individuals directly to say, what do you think's going on here? What do you think would help? Pretty cool. And he listened. And the rest is kind of microfinance history. He sort of hears that they are stuck in the cycle of lending and are repaying their loans at with very, very high interest rates. And he sort of says, well, what if I lend you money? What if the interest rates aren't 300 or 3,000%? Wouldn't that help? Of course it did. And it's sort of this lovely kind of fairy tale that unfolds where they actually do use this money to grow their businesses, lift themselves out of poverty, where they repay the loans, and things are starting to, their trajectory changed. So that was amazing. But the third thing, and this was the best thing. Dr. Yunus was talking about the poor that evening in a way that I'd never heard anybody talk about them before. He was not telling me stories of sadness and suffering. He was not telling me about individuals that needed me to figure out a solution and swoop in and fix everything. He was talking about smart, strong, hardworking people, perhaps uneducated, but people who were doing everything right. They were getting up every day, working very, very hard. So the basket weavers, they would get up every day. They didn't have anything, but they would borrow a little bit of money to go buy supplies to weave their baskets. They would weave the baskets. They were very skilled at what they did. They made a beautiful product. They sold it. They made money on it, but they would have to pay all the money back to the moneylender. They might have a little left over on a really good day, but usually they didn't. But that was the attempt. They would go to sleep, maybe hungry, maybe their families were hungry, and they'd get up the next day and do it again. The only thing they were lacking was access to a fair source of capital. So for the first time, I was hearing stories of entrepreneurs. And after being in Silicon Valley for a while, that's the coolest thing to be as an entrepreneur. At least that's what it seemed like to me, being in the business school and seeing all these great people who were starting organizations. So it changed everything for me, and I became so excited about not having that usual sort of Pavlovian response of feeling terrible about myself and guilty and shameful when I heard about the poor, but instead hearing about really great people that I wanted to meet and talk to myself. That, again, this is not prescriptive, but I quit my job a few weeks later, and this was me. I moved to East Africa to basically try to make up my own way, my own excuse to talk to poor entrepreneurs the way Dr. Yunus had. And I thought if I was a really good listener, because I got a little bit intimidated being in a business school, how do you say this? I never had studied business before, whatever. You get what I'm saying. No business experience. That was me. And I was intimidated because I didn't know what my skills were, and everyone there could do spreadsheets and stuff. But what I heard from Dr. Yunus was if you're a really good listener, that can lead to really good insights, and maybe you can act on those. So that's what I wanted to do. Kind of naive, but that was me. So I interviewed 150 entrepreneurs in very rural areas in Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania, and I listened very carefully. And I heard beautiful stories of change. I didn't hear always perfect success stories with their businesses, but a lot of them had succeeded, and a lot of them had changed the way they thought about themselves, and they'd changed the way they believed in possibility in the world, and they were starting to see a path out of poverty for themselves and their families for the first time ever, and it was lovely. And this is where it gets really fun. There were also these beautiful details that I would have never guessed would have existed in these stories. So, you know, at that time, if someone would have given me a magic wand and said, go fix poverty, I would have thought, great, give me the wand, I'll work something out, and I'll make it happen, no problem. I mean, I didn't really know answers, but I thought, this is great, I'll figure it out. But after I started to hear a lot of these stories, I realized I would miss a lot if I had been, or any one of us would be given the power to do that, because really, each individual had their own ideas of exactly what a better life meant for them. There were a lot of commonalities. There were many people who said, you know, now with the profits from my business, I'm able to send my children to school, including this gentleman who was a fisherman in that lake behind in the back of the picture. He had a second-grade education, cared for more than 30 people in his household, and with $100 fixed a fishing net, fixed a little part of his boat that he had made, and things were slowly improving. Anyway, many people wanted to send their children to school. Many people had better nutrition, and they were able to eat protein in their diets maybe once a week as opposed to once a month or a few times a year. Many people were able to buy medicine that they hadn't been able to before. They purchased mosquito nets. Many had changed those are just storage areas for grain, but many had mud huts with grass thatched roofs like that, and they were able to build more sound structures with concrete blocks maybe, or an aluminum sheet roof. The list went on and on, but there were these lovely details of change that were very unexpected and very humbling, because again, these were the things I would have completely missed, right? Again and again I heard things like this. I heard women who were very excited to afford sugar to put in their tea, because then when guests came, they could offer them sugar as well. And they felt very proud to be a good hostess. I remember I was in Kibera, which is not just the largest slum in Kenya, but on the whole African continent. More than 1 million people are there squatting. Anyway, most of the homes are very flimsily constructed and made of different scraps of materials, you know, plastic and branches and stuff that's, you know, lying around. And basically, I met with a family there who said, look, they pointed to their shack that they lived in, and they said, we saved up for 2 months for that lock for the door, and now we feel secure when we sleep at night. I would have never guessed that either. So there were these details that were beautiful and fascinating. And so even if I would interview 20 goat herders in a row, I would hear these lovely details. And it galvanized for me this idea, well, a few things. One, that people should be making their own changes in their own lives and choose the way they want to make their own lives better. But two, that these stories, each one of them was special. And so often I had seen like poster child stories. Not Sally Struthers, that's where she got a lot right? She had, you can sponsor this particular child. But I had a lot of experiences seeing like, you know, help someone like so-and-so, or help these 400,000 people that suffer from this problem. But what I hadn't heard were these individual stories. So, the story starts to pick up here. I became a little bit obsessed with all of these new friends that I was meeting, and in the evenings I was learning Swahili. I wasn't that great at it, and so I would often hang out by myself in the hut or whatever where I was staying. And so I would journal and write down all the stories that I could remember from the day. And every once in a while, when I'd get to an electricity source and an internet cafe, I would email my friends and family and say, oh my gosh, listen to the story of the person I met. Well, naturally, a lot of these stories were cliffhangers, right? So here's Jeffrey, he's a fisherman, he got his $100, things are starting to improve, and then I went to the next person. And so my friends and family, we all started to have this lovely dialogue saying, well, what's next for Jeffrey and his family? What about, you know, what do they need next? Do they need another small loan? And it just seemed like, well, that's a great idea. Why can't we supply that? That would be really fun. Now, I'm saying this in kind of a flippant way, but I want to make sure this is clear. There's some case studies and stuff that I've read out there, and they're great, about Kiva. And at this point in the story, they usually say, thus was born the idea for the world's first peer-to-peer micro-living marketplace, blah, blah, blah. And they say, that's great, yes, it's great we had that vision kind of far from the future, but at the very, very beginning, myself and my co-founder Matthew, we wanted to keep in touch with our new friends in Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania. We wanted to be able to lend to them selfishly, because we thought it would be really interesting and fun. And we didn't see another organization around that really wanted to do that, so we thought, why not? Very naive, very, in very many ways, it was pretty much like about our own little personal project and our own new friends. So what we did was this. I flew back to California after that 3 months, and I basically talked to anybody that would give me the time of day. I went to anyone in a nonprofit that had anything to do with banking or lending or microfinance in any form. I talked to lawyers. I talked to, I cold called the SEC. That was fun. I talked to anybody that would talk to me and said, what do you think? What do you think? What do we need to do if we want to lend money to our new friends in Uganda? What do you say? And we got a lot of kind of vague, amorphous feedback. You know, on the Charlie Brown, the Peanuts cartoon, where there's the teacher and she's like, wah, wah, and she's the socks, I guess, and she's like, wah, wah, wah. So I honestly remember that year as a lot of like sound, but then scary words like blah, 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 Patriot Act, like blah, blah, blah. And the SEC might come knock on your door and get mad at you and arrest you. What if you fund a terrorist? There are all these scary things that people said when we had this pretty basic idea out there. And truthfully, after many, many months and after a lot of attempts to figure it out, we still didn't know if it was legal, but we thought, look, what's the worst that could happen? And I'm telling you all this because if you have an idea, you don't have to have it be perfect before you try it. Now, again, I'm not saying don't do your homework and make an effort, but this is really where we are. We didn't know if it was legal. We couldn't get a straight answer from the SEC because maybe we weren't articulating the question well enough. And I didn't really own anything of real value. I had a crappy car. It was like a 91 Honda Civic that had already gotten stolen and returned. I'm not kidding. And I kid you not, I lived in this apartment in the Mission. Our landlord robbed us. I'm not joking. I shouldn't joke. He went to jail. No, I'm not kidding though. Like, he actually went to prison. Like, wasn't a lot to lose. So in this, in the spring of '05, Matt, my co-founder, and I basically said, let's just try this. What's the worst that can happen? Like, really, is the SEC going to knock on our door? Probably not. And if they do, we'll just explain we're trying to do this nice thing. Let's try. So I got myself another job that would fly me back to Uganda because we didn't have the money to buy a ticket. And I brought my camera, and I took pictures of 7 friends that I'd met the year before. Matt had whipped up this nice little website. I posted their pictures and their stories on the website. We spammed our friends and family. I actually posted them from Uganda to dial-up connection. It took all day. It was kind of a memorable day. Flew back to California, spammed friends and family, and said, look, these 7 friends need $3,000 bucks. What do you say? And basically overnight, the money came in. We wired it over to our friend Moses and said, can you distribute that and like collect it over time and let us know how it went? We're not a real organization. My grandma's like handing me cash. This is not like online banking. I mean, it was in our Wells Fargo account, transferred to our friend's account. This was not official. This was just a project among our friends. But that was the beginning of Kiva. And over the next 6 months, those entrepreneurs were paid. And then in October of '05, we said, oh, our little experiment worked. Let's take the word beta off of the site, and we'll have our friend write a press release, and we'll put it on the website saying, our idea works, we're official, and we'll be real. So that's what we did. Now, it just so happened when we did that, within the next 3 weeks, we put another 12 businesses on the site or something, called up Moses and had him find the entrepreneurs and take pictures. I'd left my camera in Uganda. Anyway, over the next few weeks, it just so happened that 300-some blogs picked up on our little side project, including 2 of the 3 most widely read blogs in the world. So thus began our first official year, and thus began this kind of crazy, completely undeserved swarm of interest and buzz throughout the blogosphere about this little side project. One day in November, suddenly 1 million people read about Kiva. And this was, I didn't know 1 million people. I was in school full-time by then, Matt had a full-time job, but our site was inundated. Over that first year, we facilitated $500,000 worth of loans. The second year, it was $15 million. The third year, it was $40 million. The fourth year, it was almost 100. We missed it by a few days. And then today, it's only 4.5 years in, we're at about $135 million. About $1 million is facilitated every week in these little $25 bets through the website. And there are lenders and entrepreneurs in 195 countries around the world. So that's the fast forward up to today. And what I'm going to do now is kind of pause and look back and tell you, to the best of my ability, what I think I've learned over the last few years. I'm still learning, and I think this is what's true. Because I was kind of late to the game of learning about business, I ended up, I think I mentioned, going back to Stanford. I've made some jokes here about how, I had 5 tutors for my first 4 classes. Like, I hadn't done math since high school. It was so confusing to me. Day 1 of business school, I'm like, wow, time value of money, this is fascinating. Like, it was all new to me, but I did it. But anyway, so some of these are business lessons, but they're pretty much things that I think are true in life in a big picture way. So I'm going to tell you some of those and see if they resonate. So the first one is know your mission. Sounds kind of bland. This is a lesson I think about identity and knowing who you are and knowing who you're not. And I think it's incredibly important to know that with total clarity. So Kiva's mission is to connect people through lending for poverty alleviation. I'm going to say it again. Our mission is to connect people through lending for poverty alleviation. So you have the what and the how and the why kind of baked in there. And it sounds like, again, kind of benign, not a big deal, but this has guided the organization so well throughout the last few years in making decisions. Decisions to take advantage of opportunities and to not take advantage of opportunities, depending on how they allow us to be who we are in the world. So for example, our mission is not, hey, let's raise a whole lot of money for microfinance, wouldn't that be fun? Our mission is not, let's build a really big, powerful network of microfinance institutions, that's MFIs, so that they can, we can be a very powerful lobbying group. No. It's about connecting individuals. So what does that mean? Well, I'll give you one little example. About 2.5 years ago, there was a gentleman who will remain anonymous who called the Kiva office, and I happened to pick up the phone, and he was like, hey, love what you guys are doing at Kiva. I shouldn't yell, but anyway. Hey, love what you guys are doing at Kiva. It's great stuff. Listen, I'm with blah, blah, blah company. Again, not going to go there. But we have a new CSR program. That's corporate social responsibility. And we have $10 million in this program, and it's great, and we want to really put it through Kiva. What do you think? And he was like super enthusiastic, didn't take a breath, like just talk, and said that he has $10 million that he wants to put through Kiva. So I said, well, great, thanks for calling us. Hi. Now, what do you mean? Like, do you want to just put it through the system and get it back? Or do you want to actually divide it up among your clients and your staff and maybe give them gift certificates so that they, human beings, can go onto the website and read stories about entrepreneurs, choose some people to lend to, get the money back over time, et cetera, right? Have the actual experience of doing what Kiva was designed to do. And at the time, and for much of our history, we were unable to keep up with this onslaught of demand, so we often ran out of loans. So, all else being equal, the question at that moment in time for us was, would we rather just have one big lump of money that has that sort of faceless, nameless money that comes from a company where no one's like getting to read these awesome updates and seeing the picture of the new goats and, or do we want to say no thank you and instead, all else being equal, allow that $10 million to be provided in $50 and $25 and $100 bits from people all over the world. And of course we chose that. So I said very politely, no thank you, and I directed that gentleman with $10 million to a lot of other great organizations that it'd be better for him to put his money into, and maybe he could even make some interest on that if he wanted. That would be more appropriate for him. So we said no to that, and I say that because there are often really good opportunities that might come by in life, but if they're not about who you are, then it's maybe not the right fit. And it's, I think, important to feel equal ease in saying yes or no to great opportunities based on who you are and who you're not. So that's kind of the first little insight. The second one is about staying open. If that first little lesson, know your mission, is about identity, this is about trust and allowing other people to be involved in your life and give feedback and participate in the things that you care about in your life and help you get better. So, we all know now open source, crowdsource stuff, it's not that new of a concept now, but it was kind of scary to start out and have so much of what we did at Kiva be very open. So I'll just give you one little example. This is an old screenshot of just some of the 500-some volunteer translators and editors that work with Kiva. All the ones that are linked in blue, by the way, have Kiva profiles, and you can go see their lending page and stuff. Anyway, okay, so that's maybe not that innovative a thing, but we work in so many countries to have hundreds of people every day logging on for like 2.5 hours to translate something from French into English or Swahili into English or something. It's kind of intense, and it's a lot to manage, and it's not something you can really actually control in a traditional sense. You have to give away some control. It's a little bit scary. Not everything is double and triple checked, translated, 5 times. These are people that have special logins, go into the guts of the system, see the queue of entrepreneur profiles that have been posted, and translate them, and they are the ones that have the power to make them pop up live on the site and then have lenders be able to lend to them. It's kind of scary, but we wouldn't have gotten done, who knows, but even a fraction of what we've gotten done had we not engaged with them and had we not really given them the ability to have their fingerprints on this work. The Kiva Fellows program is also something that's pretty awesome. We've sent hundreds of people out into the field to kind of do a version of my little dream job 5 years ago or 6 years ago at this point, where you get to go out into working with one of our microfinance institution partners. And this is the basic description of the job. There's a lot more. But you basically interview 150 entrepreneurs, sound familiar, and blog about them on the site and tell lenders how things are going and take pictures and write to your heart's content about what you've seen and heard and the good, the bad, and the ugly. We encourage fellows to be 100% transparent with what they discover. And this is tough work, and not everything is perfect, but so it's a little scary, right, to engage people in this and again give them control to just provide content on the site, but that's part of how we do it. This is a very old screenshot of my Facebook page. But all the Kiva little signs there that you see, those are all different apps and stuff that were designed not by Kiva staff, but by volunteers. So there's a lot out there that's designed by volunteers and built by volunteers. This is a community for lenders, by lenders. We don't manage this. We don't run this. These are lenders out there that love Kiva, and we say, go for it. Use the logo. Use this. Create a community that you want to create. We're very open with that. We're not an organization that holds our brand really close to our chest. We allow people to basically take this and run with it. And more often than not, people really they've surprised me with, and have exceeded my expectations in terms of what they do with this. So to take it a little farther, Kivapedia, again, imagine like one day stumbling upon this. This is what happened to me. I was like, who made this? Who made Kivapedia? But people are out there that love Kiva, and we're cool with it. We say, great, go manifest your total enthusiasm for Kiva in whatever way you feel is great. Certainly if they say something that's like totally not true, we pull that back. But look, if you look at the left nav, there's Kiva Friends, there's Kiva on all sorts of social networks. We got a call one day saying, hey, office warming party for you guys in Second Life this Saturday. We got really great real estate for a great office for you. We're like, what? Are you on Second Life? No, this is a little while ago. So people take this and run with it. There's people show up with Kiva tattoos. It's great. I mean, how are you going to control that, right? I don't want to be involved in that one. There's Kiva TV, where if you want to, you can go watch 24/7 any video that's ever, but maybe this will show up on Kiva TV someday. There's a lot out there. For the techies in the room, we released our API last year, and instantly all these really interesting things popped up. There's an iPhone app you can lend in like 30 seconds on your phone. It's fun stuff. Again, it might sound like, yeah, big deal. To watch basically something that was very, very close to me, and basically my little project go and grow in the world and expand and be handed off piece by piece by piece, day after day to many other people. It's a weird and scary thing, but it's a really good thing. Okay, this one's a quick one. The idea of iteration. Basically, I'm not really even going to go into my slides for this. This has been a very freeing concept for me about erasing the language of success and failure kind of from my vocabulary. With this, I described we started things out when we really didn't know all the answers. We just wanted to try. You throw something out there, particularly on the web, you throw something out there, you see how people respond, you learn, you measure, you figure out what's working and what's not, and then you just make it better and better and better. I think you can do this with a lot of things, and I think it's very easy, especially in great academic institutions, to think, oh, I need to know all the answers, I need to know exactly how this will scale over the next 3 years to reach 5 million people before I even begin. No, you don't. You can have a good idea, do your homework about it, that's good, but then just start trying and learn as you go, and don't be afraid to refine live. There's some concepts that kind of go hand in hand with this. Like, I will use one slide. An idea of radical transparency. Like, this is a fake screenshot, but like if we would mess up everything on the site, you would see it in red, we would correct it, and it would still be live on the site. And there have been errors, and we still show that because we want people to know that this is a real, ongoing, transparent process that we're improving every day. This is a version of what you'd see when we run out of loans, which hasn't happened in a little while. Okay, this is the last point. So, focusing on individuals. I can't tell you how difficult it was in the beginning to say, look, I know it's really efficient to have a poster child and to have like a face of a person, an image of a person, and then just tell a big statistic and get people to give to someone like so-and-so, or to a big fund where, a big problem is addressed, not directly to people. So we had to kind of fight for that. We had to fight for showing context, we had to fight for showing specific stories. It was a little bit more time consuming, it was a little bit more expensive to work with partner microfinance institutions that are out there finding clients, administering loan funding, taking these pictures, writing these stories up on the site. We believed it was worth it. We believe it's worth it to have, a real, actual person in real life, real time, that needs a real thing that you can provide. So I think the best thing I can do is kind of introduce you to some entrepreneurs that I've had the privilege of lending to or just been on our site, but most are folks that I've loaned to. So this is a popcorn seller in Samoa, a butcher in Afghanistan, a group of vegetable sellers in Kenya, a taxi driver in Bulgaria. Love that pose. This one is a hair salon in Iraq. This gentleman is a bicycle repairman in Ecuador. And this woman runs a daycare in San Francisco. So what does that mean? So Kiva launched in the US about a little over a year ago. Had kind of a pilot round. And here's the thing, maybe that goat herder that I loaned to a few years ago is now up and running and things are great. He has a PayPal account and he's lending to Sylvia in San Francisco. Kind of uncomfortable to think about, but I think kind of awesome and I think really, really good for the world. And here's why. So I told you I went into quite a lot of detail about how when I was little and all growing up, I learned about the poor in a particular way. Well, what do you think happens to the world when a 6-year-old girl in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today learns about a woman in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, for the first time through this story, through a story that's more genuine and more balanced and told by the woman herself as much as possible? And what if that little girl has a chance to get involved not out of a place of like guilt and freaking out and shame, but instead of an idea of like, wow, this is a great thing that she's doing, I want to partner with her. And we haven't gone into this very much, but the idea of partnering in such a way that does not force someone to choose between being a donor-beneficiary relationship, or an investor, like I'm going to make money off of you, but instead to have this connection of real equality. I'm going to lend you this $100 and you're going to pay it back to me, and we're going to be fair and square. I believe in you. I want to be your partner, your business partner, and I would love for you to pay me back. That's a particular kind of relationship, and I think it's a really important one to perpetuate in the world. Because all the numbers are really fun to talk about, and I think they're important, and I think there are ways to get to make change in the world that actually are effective and ways that aren't as effective. But here's the deal: money is the most important thing to me. So this is just me speaking as me, my opinion, not the voice of Kiva. But there are a lot of problems in the world that are actually quite solvable. Think of one that matters to you, and think about whether or not there are actually solutions that exist. If you thought about hunger. There's enough food in the world to go around, technically speaking. It's just a matter of getting it to the right places, which is not exactly rocket science. It's not easy, but it's possible. There are curable diseases that people still suffer from. So what is the problem? What the hell's going on if we can fix these things and we're not, right? So this is my theory. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think somewhere along the way, something is broken, and I think it's one of two things. The first thing might be that maybe we've been told again and again and again, these are big, enormous problems, and they're so huge, and they may never go away. It's like we've been saturated with that message, right? So we kind of forget that change is possible. The other, and I think, scarier thing is we've been told over and over again that people out there in the world that are different than us in any way, but particularly socioeconomically, are somehow not as capable and somehow have less potential than we do to create change as well. So we've forgotten that other people are capable as well. We've forgotten to believe in someone else's potential. That's a scarier thing. So I feel like if those two things change, maybe by being reminded of the real story of many people out there who are living in poverty, if those things can change, I think very naturally and without a lot of effort, the way we think about each other, the way we speak about each other, the way we interact, the things we buy, the organizations we choose to work for, things kind of fall into place. And I think a lot of the problems that are perpetuated out there in the world actually start to shift. So that's what I care about most. I think if we can start to change the way we think about ourselves and we think about each other, that's what really starts to change the world. So thank you, and ask me questions. Oh, don't all ask at once. By the way, I would like to say, if you do have a class, I know some people have classes, is that right? I won't be offended. Do your thing. Yes, and would you mind saying your name? And I'll repeat the question, so.
Yeah, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. You are amazing.
That's very nice of you.
I mean, so incredible, your enthusiasm, your love. And
I didn't tell her to say that.
your willingness to just go for it is so inspiring. And I'm sure that there's a model that because I know that there's some that people work for your organization.
Yes.
How is it that you collect some revenues to keep the organization going? What's the revenue?
Question. Okay, Mary, that's a great question. It's a question about how do we basically pay our bills, pay our staff, etc. So we have 50-some staff in San Francisco. So it's a really fun big group, a lot of good friends. And I'm going back to this so I could show you. Okay, so basically, what's so funny? Basically, so today the model, which I kind of glossed over, is this. It's not me running around with my camera in Uganda anymore, which was totally fun, but again, not sustainable. Such a downer. So lenders come to the website. So there's lenders, the Kiva website, the platform. microfinance institutions that are our local partners. These are the banks for the poor all around the world. There are thousands of them, and we recruit the best of them and do a lot of due diligence and build up relationships with, I think right now we work with a little over 100 of them to basically find great entrepreneurs. They're already the experts on this, so why not? They find great entrepreneurs, they lend the money out, they collect repayments, and they basically use the system to do all this. So here's the deal. Internet lenders, they come to the Kiva website, they browse, they find an entrepreneur, and right at the point of purchase, right when they're going to check out, we're like, oh, Joe and Laura, those are my college friends. We're like, Joe and Laura, thank you so much for your $25 for the seamstress, right? All of it's going to go to her, and all of it will come back as she repays, which 98.7% of the time she will. But would you help us pay our rent, please? And we ask for a little tip on top. So if they're lending $25, maybe we ask for $2, $3, $5, whatever. Most people say okay. When it's hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, that adds up. We cover 80% of our costs just by this optional, like, would you help us? So that is kind of effective, and that is a revenue stream. Let's take it seriously. But the other interesting thing is this. So imagine Joe and Laura's $25 comes onto Kiva, and again, hundreds of thousands, all this money coming through the site. Even if it's sitting in our accounts for a few hours or a few days, it adds up, and we can make interest on that. Think of it even on the way back. That's even crazier, because the entrepreneurs are paying, the MFIs are paying. Joe and Laura are totally excited about their entrepreneur repaying, but they're probably not going to go online like every week or every 2 weeks, whatever their repayments are, and like get that money and do something with it. So it's sitting there, and it's in our accounts, and it's always available to them. But in the meantime, we invest it, and we make money after that too. We have been profitable. Kiva is a more profitable nonprofit than we would have been as a for-profit. Right? Crazy. It's not, I don't get the money, but the organization gets the money, and we're able to do more of what we're doing more quickly because of this tax structure. Here's the deal. We get a lot subsidized, so we're the first nonprofit to get PayPal to waive all their transaction fees from the very beginning. I don't know that they knew that they would be doing this for hundreds of millions of dollars back and forth, but they said okay. So, and ask for bold things. Just go into company, ask for what you need. So anyway, there are things like this with all these volunteer hours. There's so much that we get done because people know that the mission is pure, and so they have trust and they have generosity, and so we get all this wonderful time and service from many, many people. So I say that because there are great businesses out there that are doing wonderful things for the world, and that's great. And there are nonprofits that I think some of them are screwing things up. So like, I would recommend, being kind of agnostic about if you want to go do something great in the world. Who knows where that will be? We think Kiva thinks like a business where it makes sense. We think like a school where it makes sense. Think like whatever. Just get the job done. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be stuck in necessarily the culture of that tax structure. You do have to follow the rules and the laws and stuff, but you can make money, you can be cash flow positive and profitable, even though in nonprofit talk everyone says sustainable. It's still the same thing. Yes?
My name is ASP.
Hi.
What mechanism of control do you have in place to make sure that the activities that are financing are legitimate and not illegal?
So what mechanisms do we have in place to make sure that the things that we're doing are legal?
Are there any external
Yes.
institutions?
Yeah, so basically, of our team, let's say a third of them are microfinance partnerships managers. So they are full-time managing all of these relationships with the microfinance institutions that we have. So they do, first of all, they do a ton of due diligence up front. We literally send auditors out to check out the institution. We get references. We spend time with the management team. There's self-reported financial data that we kind of verify. They spot check. They go visit a bunch of entrepreneurs and say, did you really get this money? How's that going? Et cetera. So basically, we do a ton of due diligence up front before we even partner with the institution. And then there's ongoing kind of management of those relationships and maintenance of those relationships. There's also, so the fellows actually play a huge role, because when you can send a fellow to an institution that's going to be parked there for at least 3 months, they see and they hear so many things, and they get to really understand the team and know what's going on, and it's much better than if you have the auditor, well, it's just different. There are different ways of knowing how things are going. Now, it's not foolproof. Not every partnership has gone 100% perfectly, but it's pretty good. And we're okay with taking a certain level of risk to try to get out there and work with these great institutions that maybe some of them are the Grameen Bank of 20 years ago. Maybe some of them are, they're not all small either. There's small ones, large ones, all types. But, it's not foolproof, but it's pretty good. Yes. I'll go there, and then I will go to you, okay? Deal? So,
hi. Thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing. My name is Ruby. So my question is about these local partners, microfinance institutions.
Yeah.
Have they just started popping up all over the place since the UNIS microfinance? What kind of organizations are they? Are they banks? Are they nonprofits? What are they?
Good question. Okay, and it's Ruby?
Yes.
Okay, this is Ruby, and her question's about like what is the deal with, well, I'm paraphrasing. What's going on with microfinance institutions out there? What's out there? So basically, imagine there are about 10,000-ish. I mean, this is a number that you can round up or down a bit, but 10,000-ish microfinance institutions out there. The vast majority of them are small. The vast majority are serving only a few hundred or a few thousand people. The vast majority of them are NGOs. Some of them, over time, they'll grow and serve more people and sometimes become non-bank financial institutions. Sometimes they become banks and they become sustainable for-profit entities. There's all kinds. There are banks that have started to kind of serve different clients now and have smaller loan sizes and things like that. So they're all over the map. What else can I tell you? So most of the money out there, like institutional capital, commercial capital, something between 85 and 90% of it goes to like the top tier MFIs, the top few hundred that are doing this work and are really, really low risk. I mean, they're phenomenal investment opportunities if that's your thing. And if you have, several $1 million at a time to place in any one institution. Kiva works with kind of the long tail. We work with anyone along that spectrum, but we work with the long tail of institutions, some of which are quite small, some of which really don't have a presence online or any sort of, like maybe not a long track record or history, and we give them a chance to kind of prove themselves on the site. And maybe they only have a fundraising limit of a few $1,000s a month, but over time they can kind of grow and change that. So there's a lot to talk about there. Did I answer your question, basically?
Yeah, I'm just hoping there's a huge movement of that.
Oh, and your question was also around, like, is this a new thing since Dr. Eunice?
Yes,
No, I mean, there were several pioneers. I mean, first of all, these activities have gone on for a very long time. I mean, there have been small community lending groups forever. But in the last, say, 3.5, 4 decades, modern microfinance, like the Grameen banks, the Axion, Opportunity International, they're a handful of real leaders in this space. Finca is another one. So there are a bunch of them that have been around in the last few decades. And truthfully, while it's a pretty steady trajectory of growth in terms of the number of institutions and the reach that they have out there, the need is growing too, which is good news, but also the gap isn't necessarily lessening. Does that make sense? So there's not like a new proliferation necessarily, but yeah, and there's growth in different ways. You can grow by serving more clients in the same institution or new institutions, and there are a lot of theories on that. This is a longer conversation, but if it's what people want to talk about, we can go there. But what if I try this show? You had a question.
Yeah, how important was it for your parents and the people around you to support you? And were they like, hey, that's kind of crazy, and you're just like, hey, I'm gonna go to Africa, peace out. Sure. What was their reactions to?
Did you bug my phone and were you reading all the emails? That's exactly what I said. No, that's a really good question. So my mom is a warrior, so you can imagine our relationship. No, she's like, what are you doing? So one of my, again, I gotta be careful with my advice here. I don't want to say move to Africa and don't tell your families. That's a bad thing. But I will say little by little, my parents have sort of lived vicariously through my adventures, and they've been, here's the deal, I have the greatest parents in the world, so they're always supportive. They're always supportive no matter what I'm doing. They were supportive when it was 7 entrepreneurs, they're supportive when it's 700,000 people. They're totally supportive all the time. And I respect them and try to honor them by, not doing too many completely crazy things, or at least not telling them before I do them, and telling them after when I know I'm okay. It was really, really important. And it's funny because I think at the very beginning, they were actually our first lenders. So we totally needed them, and they did it because they loved us, but they also did it because, they would support, I think, probably anything I would do, that is not a small detail, I think, in my life. I think I'm really, really lucky and really blessed that I've had that. But yeah, my mom is not a traveler. She's not a let's go do adventures. My dad is more like that. So my dad and I do yoga every day that I'm home in Pittsburgh when I'm visiting. We do yoga together. So they're a wonderful blend of the stability, grounding, and the Don Quixote sort of, let's go out and do adventures. Does that answer your question? I'm just going to gush and go on and on about my mom and dad. Yeah? Yeah. So, okay, all right. Let me just summarize by saying one thing. I guess little by little, when I would go on these adventures and keep being okay, their tolerance built up. So ease them into it. Yes?
You started in Africa. How did you actually expand across the world to other countries and regions of the world?
Yeah, so the question is, we started in Africa, how do we expand? So in the very, very beginning, it was literally cold calling. It was, again, like talking my way into these jobs, or conferences or whatever, so I could get flown to somewhere, some other country, and like pound the pavement or the dirt road or wherever I was, and find microfinance institutions and ask them to work with us. And in the beginning, it's funny, this is like definitely pre-business understanding at all. I didn't have a real pitch. I was like, come on, this would be totally fun. Don't you want to do this like great social experiment? And they're like, we are an organization that's already strapped for cash, and it's not like we have extra time to play on your website. And so I didn't know how to say, you will be accessing 0% debt capital that will, change your cost structure, and you'll save 10 to 15% on the cost of, I didn't know the pitch yet. I just said, won't this be fun? So anyway, in the beginning it was cold calling people who thought it would be interesting. And then over time it definitely morphed into kind of the system and the program that we have now. But truthfully, in the very beginning it was like, who do you know? Friends and family, who do you know? Who do you know? We called up for any friend that was in the Peace Corps anywhere and saying, who's around you doing lending? Do you think they would like us and work with us? It was literally just cold calling and cold emailing, and like our very first employee and one of my best friends in the world, Chelsea, she had the greatest job because we kind of share it, and we'd stay up all hours of the night and call whatever time zone we could to just like try to find partners. So, and when you're there in person, it's a lot easier. So sometimes it was worth like just getting somewhere and paying a little extra to extend your ticket and like walk around and talk to people in person. I wish I had a more polished answer, but that's literally, it's just like scrapping it together, calling people and trying to like make them think it would be really awesome to do this experiment with us. Yeah, it got more sophisticated over time. Okay, I'm gonna go you and then you. Yeah.
A lot of what you have said has done really, it went really smoothly and you convinced people. What was the most discouraging thing though, and how did you learn from that and overcome that?
So the question is, what was one of the most discouraging things? What were the challenges? Which, by the way, there is a lot of hard stuff. Oh boy, I'm choosing among many, many things. So, this was strange. It was hard to. So we were kind of just guessing that people would want to lend money and not have it be like a tax deductible donation and not make money off of that, like not get interest off of it. It was really hard to make that case for anyone to support us. So like, this is the worst of all worlds. We're like, well, we don't think so. And what was interesting was that like, look, at $25 or $50, it was a new kind of price point. It was accessible to new people. So yeah, you didn't get a tax write-off, but like, I don't know about you, I've like saved all my little receipts from all my little donations, and like I gave my sweater to Goodwill, and that was $12. Like, I've saved all those, they've never made a difference on my taxes. So no one with the $25 like donation really actually cares. And then also, if you're like investing, do you really care if you get $25, $50 back at the end of the year? Like, not really if you've had an awesome experience. So it turned out that was something, but in the beginning we just felt like idiots, because we were like, we think people would like this. Again, doesn't it sound fun? This is the theme. That was one thing. It was also, it was very, very scary. So one of the most heartbreaking things, truthfully, was Moses. That relationship changed, and we ended up having to really cut off partnership with him. And I don't want to say anything negative about Moses on video because he's a lovely man. But we were so trusting at the beginning. Sometimes, I think with Moses, and I think with some other people too, we were just so much like, well, you're the experts. Do you need more money? We will send it. Do you want to post more entrepreneurs? Can you handle it? You say you can? Fantastic. And we quite naively sent a lot of money into organizations that weren't ready to handle all of it. And we felt such pressure to grow that it was sometimes very tempting to want to grow at an irresponsible growth rate, because we felt like we were failures. And we had to prove that the idea could scale. And if we ran out of loans too much, people would think we couldn't scale. And that was a big argument against us, and we wanted to support funders. So sometimes I think we pressured our partners to grow too fast. And then, I'll say the last, and I'll just say it in a really general sense. It was a heck of a lot of stress on a lot of personal relationships in my life, because it was sort of, I don't have kids of my own or anything yet, but I imagine it's like somewhat a little teensy bit analogous to having a baby. Like, it's a website, it doesn't go to sleep, people are on all the time, and sometimes there are these emergencies in the middle of the night, and you're like sucked in, and you like have to deal with every problem that comes up, and it's overwhelming and messy, and like, so definitely kind of got sucked into the black hole of like trying to just scale and build this thing and be responsible and make sure we had enough money to pay employees. So I wasn't always the greatest, most available friend or sister or whatever for a period of time there. So that was hard. Yes?
I actually have two questions.
Sure.
One is, how did you get the name, and how did you come up with the name
Kiva.
Yes.
And
That's a great
secondly,
one.
I made you excited, so we're happy with that. And the second question is, what did the people who you were lending to think about your kind of crazy, wild, too good to be true business idea?
Okay,
You approached
these
them?
are fun questions. So I will say the first one first. All right, so the question is, where does Kiva name come from, and what do entrepreneurs think about all this, right? So when I was learning Swahili, trying to do this a few years ago, I ended up studying it and got much more of a hang of it. But in the beginning, I was like, I will just observe and like write down words. First of all, I learned like tribal languages by accident first, and like no one was understanding me the next village over because it wasn't Swahili, it was like another thing. So that was a funny, bumpy road. But I started to just look things up in dictionaries, including online dictionaries that weren't always accurate. So at one point we were like, maybe we should name this a Swahili word. It's going to be like all our friends in East Africa. And we were looking up words. And I wanted to look up the word for unity because I felt so connected to my friends. And so this dictionary told me that the Swahili word for unity was Kiva. And we're like, this is great, the URL is available, like this is what it's supposed to be. So we just went with it. So I've been back to East Africa like a dozen times. I've yet to meet any native East African that knows this word Kiva. They're like, what? So I don't really know if it's a Swahili word at all. It might be some crazy esoteric word that nobody uses it. And they're like, do you mean this? Do you mean this? So, oops. But I do know that it means nice in Finnish. And it's like a Native American word for a gathering place, which totally works. So we're in the clear. And I don't think it's a swear word or anything in any language. But there have been other peer-to-peer lending sites that were named swear words, and I'm not even going to go there. But there's some really funny stories about other sites kind of in our space that did make even more of mistakes. So okay, so that's the name story. Yeah. So do the research on that before you name your company something. The second question is, I guess I'm not good at summarizing sometimes, and so I have a lot of specific anecdotes, and I'll tell you too. So in the very beginning in Uganda, our friends that did this like pilot round, and the first like dozen or so entrepreneurs, when they found out like really what we were doing, like as we explained it to them and they got it, because imagine they're living in a village where they've never left and they didn't have electricity. So to explain the internet and like you're going to be on here, people are going to see you, like it's a big learning curve. So after a while they were like, wait, this sounds awesome. So they invested in bicycle taxi rides and stuff into town for like the first time ever, and they went to the internet cafe. They were illiterate, so they got like some of them got one of the neighborhood kids to help them log on and find their profiles online, and it became this like virtual sort of this virtual sort of bulletin board, or I don't know, this weird social network where they would like leave the village, go check out who was doing what, who was repaying on the website in the internet cafe, go back and be like, you need to repay, and they wouldn't even talk to each other. So they were kind of this weird virtual lending circle, so that was fun. Another little anecdote is, I'll say the sad one first and then the funny one. Okay, sad one is, I've definitely heard of entrepreneurs when, like, maybe a loan officer will print out their profile page, and they'll see at the bottom all these people that have loaned money to them. And so there was this one gentleman in Uganda who was like, what is this? Who are all these, like, wealthy white people around the world? And this was one little glimpse into it, but that's what he said, and he was like, he was less inclined to pay back his loan, whereas in my, like, utopian view of the world, I think, and this has happened too, most of the time this is what happens, when I've seen other people see their profile pages, they're like, oh my gosh, this community of people all around the world believes in me and cares about me, and they feel even more confident and more driven to pay back that loan. But it can go either way, right? Because you can think, oh, these are people that don't really need the money back, so there's a wide variety of responses, but this is one of the funniest ones, and kind of sad, but let's go with funny. There's like a lot of people don't want to put their pictures on the site, so there are definitely people who have like a picture of their dog or something, or like a landscape. And so I've also heard entrepreneurs be like, what is this dog lending to me? What is this? So I would just say be thoughtful about like the image you would like to portray to the entrepreneurs, because sometimes they do see, they see who you are, and it's kind of confusing. And doesn't send the greatest message, like, we'll stop there. Okay.
Huge fan of what you're
Thanks.
doing. And we're one of the sponsors. So it's
Thank you.
The Indigenous people is actually Indigenous design really quickly, and it's premium women's contemporary fashion. We have some men's stuff too, but one of our key lenders is one of the microfinance institutions that works with Kiva. It's all fair trade and organic in remote artisan communities throughout South America. But one I wanted to ask you, Jessica, was what is the average
Yes. So overall, in all of microfinance, it's somewhere between 30-35%. On Kiva, it tends to be a little bit lower. Here's the deal. It's very expensive to do this work. It's very expensive to do a lot of training, maybe before loan groups are even lending groups are even formed, before loans are even administered. It might be very, very expensive for a loan officer, for example, to hop on a motorbike and go 3 hours every week out to a village to collect repayments. Again, maybe they stay overnight because they're spending all this time doing training, etc. So that's one cost, the actual operational cost. It's also a lot of these economies have very high inflation rates. Maybe the microfinance institutions are sourcing their capital from a local bank that already is going to charge 15% interest, and they have to pass that along to entrepreneurs, let alone add on top, whatever the costs are of doing business. So costs can get up there pretty quickly. But that said, because there's often this is still the best option for people out there. And it's great when microfinance institutions do find ways to save money. I mean, it's great when they get donations. It's great when they're able to use lender deposits. It's great when they, like with Kiva, again, they save like 10-15% on their cost of debt, which allows them over time, if they want to lower interest rates, to do whatever else they want to do to move more quickly, whether it's investing in technology, hiring more people, whatever. So it sounds high, but again, at least Kiva only partners with organizations we think are charging a fair and appropriate amount of interest. Yes.
So I'm Cynthia, and an observation and a question.
Okay.
On USA television station, Character of the Month is someone from Kiva.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know who that is, but I was just intrigued.
That would be me.
Wow, they look like you. Wow, you're Character.
Yeah, they made me do my hair and put on makeup and stuff.
Okay, so
I'm serious, it doesn't look like me. Yeah, it's really...
Okay, great. Well, this
Yeah.
is fabulous. It's
Thanks.
really exciting. And then my question is, how would someone be a fellows?
Yeah, so how do you get to be a fellow? Well, glad you asked. On the website, if you go to About and then basically Kiva Fellows, it's a whole website, the Fellows information area where you can sign up. There are, I think, 4 deadlines a year to apply. And then you come to a week of training in the San Francisco office, and then you kind of get deployed out to wherever you're going to go. And often you'll work with a fellow. I actually don't know if they call it that. They should. With another person who's going out to the same area as you, and it's a really nice kind of sense of camaraderie. A lot of really wonderful people are out there already, and you kind of overlap with people who've been there for lots of times. So apply on the site. And all the information is there. The site is always smarter than I am, so not to brush off the question, but it's all there. And how are we on time? Good? 8:20? Let's see. How are you feeling back there, Tiffany? Yes, good? 5, 10, what do you think?
10.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's take another question over here. I just want to check in.
Or we could do 5.
Whatever you want. That's cool. Well, let's just keep going. I'm happy to stay. Yes?
What platform do you guys run Kiva on?
Oh, I don't even know anymore. This. I know it sounds totally irresponsible. The question is what platform do we run Kiva on? So first of all, I am not the coder. I'm not like the tech person. I was the microfinance person and found a tech partner, which is how you can do things. Second of all, I actually I stepped away from a full-time staff role in the last few months because I'm going to I'm launching a new startup in 4 or 5 weeks. It depends on how fast we can code. But not me. Again, I'm not the person that can do that really well. So I'm kind of focused on the technology of this new startup, and I'm so sorry I can't answer that question right now. Do you have another one that I can answer? I feel terrible.
What's the new startup you're doing?
Okay, that's great. So the new startup, good question. I can't answer that one. So it's called ProFounder. We may change the name, but it's called ProFounder. And I think Kiva, but U.S. entrepreneurs only and small business entrepreneurs, and think investments, not loans. So let's say you want to go start a cafe or something. You could, and these are all your friends, you could have every one of them chip in a few $100s if they could to invest in you and actually have ownership of your cafe and have equity. So it's like a real investment. They get to share in the story that you're going to be developing in a different way than with the loan. And you can post yourself on the website, so you don't have to go through your microfinance institution. So it's a totally different beast. It's legally a completely different structure, and it's going to have a totally different vibe. So kind of crowdfunding among your friends and family and community to do your startup. Or if you're an existing small business, you can raise additional funds there too, up to $1 million on the site. It's going to be so fun. Very exciting. So stay tuned for that. Yes?
For those of us who are graduating in the room, what kind of jobs do you guys have for Kiva?
I think there are literally 14 or 15 positions open. I'm not kidding. So you should totally go look. And again, the website's smarter than me. But I know there's business development stuff and marketing stuff coming up, and there's almost always technology stuff open.
Okay.
Yeah. So go to kiva.org and then click on the top. It says Do More. It's like the get involved kind of section, and then it kind of goes in increasing levels of commitment. At the end is jobs, and there's other volunteer opportunities along the way too.
Are you guys actually are you hiring right now? Or are you doing well?
Kiva's totally. Kiva's doing great. Kiva's doing great. Yeah, continue to kind of meet targets and raising well enough money to be able to pay staff. So it is a stable opportunity. It's a stable career path. Yeah. Yes.
I'm just trying to people say, what are you going to do with the philosophy degree? But it sounds like you do a lot with the philosophy
Yes.
degree.
Yes, totally.
So how did philosophy kind of possibly, what's your story?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I never get asked this. This is so fun. So how did philosophy help? Okay. So I did this article in the Stanford Social, no, it was a blog in the Stanford Social Innovation Review blog recently. And who here has read The Structure of Scientific Revolutions? Totally dork out. Thomas Kuhn. Okay, just go with me on this. He basically coined the words paradigm and anomaly and stuff. And so for me, this was amazing. Because what he says is look, we all see the world in this particular worldview, and he talks a lot about science. It's about scientific revolutions and think about how everyone saw the world when we all thought the world was flat. Everything you saw would inform that. Until all these anomalies, these things, they kind of crop up that you observe that might tell you the world is not flat. They kind of appear, and you kind of put them over there in this pile and ignore them until there are too many to ignore, and then suddenly everything shifts. And that's the new paradigm, right? That's the new way you see the world. And suddenly the things that you see in the world, you see through that lens, through that paradigm. So here's the deal. For me, this is one little example, but I really there's a lot to talk about here. So for me, that little insight showed me that when you see something in the world that doesn't quite fit, or you kind of see something that you think is new and true, it very well may be. You very well may be seeing something that's true today that wasn't true yesterday. And you should honor that, and you should respect your own ability to see that. So it wouldn't have been possible to do Kiva 10 years ago, but it was possible 5 years ago. It was possible, and my cell phone worked in a lot of Uganda 6 years ago. Moses was going to the internet cafe 6 years ago. He wasn't maybe 7 years ago or 8 years ago, but he was 6 years ago. Today, there are possibilities with mobile banking and all these other things. There are possibilities today that could start to build, you can kind of build an idea around those that weren't true yesterday. So for me, there's a nice little lesson about innovation there. Pay attention to these little insights you might have. And who knows, you may be really seeing something new and true, and you may be able to build something around that. So even if the rest of the world is saying, no, that's probably impossible, that's not the case, maybe you're the first one to see something that's changing. So that's one of many little philosophy lessons for you. Okay, and do one more? Okay. Yes, sure.
What was that name of that literature study?
Oh, Thomas Kuhn, Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Yeah, is it Theory of Scientific Revolutions or Structure? I think it's Structure of Scientific Revolutions, right? It's so good, right? I mean, I like it. I like it a lot. I have a lot of other philosophy recommendations if you'd like them. Okay, thank you all very much.